Biomaterials, osteolysis and wear, and bearing surfaces. So what's a biomaterial? A biomaterial is any substance that has been engineered to interact with biological systems for a medical purpose, either as a therapeutic or as a diagnostic. In practice, successful biomaterials are often found by trial and error. And in fact, there's little engineering rationale regarding which alloys are used for the various femoral components in total hip arthroplasty. Over the years, many biomaterials have been used in arthroplasty, including rubber, glass, ivory, and the materials we use today, which include metals, plastics, and ceramics. Let's start with metals. So metals are strong, they're tough, they're ductile, and they're susceptible to corrosion. Strength is the amount of force a material can support, or the ability of a material to withstand an applied load. And that's seen on stress-strain curves. In general, as you increase the stress on a material, the strain will increase. After a toe region, there's a linear elastic region, the slope of which is the elastic modulus. You hit a yield strength, at which point the material stops behaving elastically and starts plastic deformation. Eventually, you reach an ultimate strength, and finally failure after. Toughness. Toughness is the amount of energy per unit volume that a material can absorb up to the failure strength. It's a measure of the fracture resistance of a stress material. It's also the area under the stress-strain curve. Ductility is a measure of a material's ability to undergo significant plastic deformation before rupture or breaking, which may be expressed as percent elongation or percent area reduction from a tensile test. Essentially, a ductile material can be stretched out without breaking. We'll examine these three concepts with these stress-strain curves. The high-carbon steel is able to withstand the highest stresses. It's the strongest. The medium-carbon steel has the largest area under the curve. It's the toughest. The low-carbon steel exhibits the greatest strain prior to failure. It's the most ductile. Next, corrosion. Metals are susceptible to corrosion, which is a disintegration of a material into its constituent chemicals due to chemical reactions with its surroundings. There are many flavors of corrosion, including chemical corrosion, which is a process by which a chemical reaction occurs between a material and the environment, leading to deposition of new compounds at the surface, often changing mechanical properties. There's crevice and pitting corrosion, which are related processes in which small local features of an object cause increased corrosion in a small area. This is relevant to arthroplasty because there's a lot of modularity in arthroplasty components, a lot of junctions in which crevices are found in which corrosion can occur. Pitting corrosion refers to local irregularities which can lead to larger pits. Fretting is a chemical and mechanical process in which corrosion occurs between two opposed surfaces in motion. And this applies to arthroplasty, again, at modular junctions. We might think that there's no motion between, say, a femoral head and a stem, but there is likely micromotion at these junctions. Galvanic corrosion is corrosion due to differences in electrochemical potential between two distinct metals. And this happens in arthroplasty when we mix metals, for example, a cobalt chrome head and a titanium stem. And we're saved by passivation, which is formation of a thin film of corrosion products on a surface which acts as a barrier to further corrosion. For example, oxidation of titanium alloy. So if there's an oxide layer on the taper of a titanium stem, this reduces the galvanic corrosion between a titanium stem and a cobalt chrome femoral head. Let's talk about specific metals. So there's stainless steel, which isn't used that commonly in this country. It's used in some cemented stems. It's less corrosion resistant than titanium, and it has less osseointegration compared to titanium. So it doesn't osseointegrate as well. We'll use it in cemented stems. And a popular stem in Australia and the United Kingdom, which is also available here, is the Exeter. Cobalt Chrome. Cobalt Chrome has a high elastic modulus and stiffness. It's fatigue resistant, it's wear resistant, and it exhibits less osseointegration than titanium. So the wear resistance makes it suitable as a bearing surface. So it's used, for example, on femoral components for total knees as a bearing surface, and it's used also in total hips in the femoral head. And finally, titanium. It has low wear resistance, it forms an oxide coating, it promotes osseointegration, and its low modulus decreases stress shielding. So the low resistance makes titanium not a good choice for a bearing surface. So oftentimes in hips, we'll have a titanium stem and a cobalt chrome head. The oxide coating helps prevent galvanic corrosion when we mix metals. The osseointegration and the relative less stiffness or low modulus also makes it more ideal for femoral stems because it will ingrow well, and it will also not alter load transmission as much as a stiffer material like cobalt chrome would. So what's stress shielding? It's reduction in bone density, osteopenia, as a result of removal of typical stress from the bone by an implant, for example, the femoral component of a hip prosthesis. Let's take a look at this. So over time, a large stiff stem leads to stress shielding in the femur. The load distribution within the femur is altered with proximal bone experiencing less loads and distal bone experiencing more loads. So you'll have loss of bone and osteopenia proximally and hypertrophy distally with these, for example, large cylindrical porous-coated stems. And just as a review of elastic moduli, stainless steel and cobalt chrome alloys are relatively stiff. Titanium is less stiff. Cortical bone is much less stiff. And polyethylene is even less stiff. Let's talk about wear. So wear is a cumulative surface damage phenomenon in which material is removed from a body in the form of small particles, primarily by mechanical processes. And this applies definitely to our field. When you think about failure, reasons for revision, wear contributes. We've made progress with this. Just as with corrosion, there are many flavors of wear, including adhesive, abrasive, third body, corrosive, fatigue, and oxidative. And likely parts of all of these processes contribute to wear and arthroplasty. And wear especially affected high molecular weight or conventional polyethylene. Although wear is a problem, it's relatively wear resistant compared to other materials, has low friction, high impact strength, essentially polymer of C2H4, and it's ultra high molecular weight, so with a molecular weight of at least 1 million grams per mole. And conventional polyethylene allowed low friction arthroplasty of the hip, which was a market advancement for orthopedics. So the problem with conventional polyethylene is osteolysis, or the pathological active resorption of bone matrix by osteoclasts. And just as an example, there's osteolysis around this acetabular component, both superiorly and inferiorly. So how does osteolysis occur? How does wear debris mediated osteolysis occur? So there's wear debris, polyethylene, for example, that occurs from an articulation. This is phagocytized by macrophages, which in turn stimulate osteoclast progenitors with inflammatory cytokines. These progenitors mature into osteoclasts, which resorb bone. Let's compare osteolysis and stress shielding. So there's osteolysis on the hip on the right with bone resorption along the distal aspect of the stem. On the left side, you see osteopenia in the greater trochanter. So this is not because of osteoclasts, but because of reduced stresses that the bone proximally experiences. So how was wear of conventional polyethylene addressed? It was addressed with cross-linking and the formation of highly cross-linked ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. So cross-linking improves wear but decreases fatigue and fracture resistance. Cross-linking occurs by irradiation followed by melting, annealing, or stabilization with antioxidants such as vitamin E. These secondary steps are used to address free radicals that are generated by irradiation. Free radicals lead to oxidation, and shelf storage in air increases oxidation. In general, highly cross-linked polyethylene has a decreased number and size of wear particles and subsequently less osteolysis. So let's talk about bearing surface couples. We've spoken about metal on cross-linked polyethylene. There's metal on metal, there's ceramic on ceramic, and there's ceramic on cross-linked polyethylene. So although conventional polyethylene and metal advanced arthroplasty, problems with osteolysis led to research to identify bearing couples that had less wear. And these included, again, the metal on metal and ceramic on ceramics. And if you look at wear rates in vivo, ceramic on ceramic and metal on metal led to reduced wear in comparison to metal on cross-linked polyethylene. If you look at total hips today, though, there are much fewer metal on metal implants and ceramic on ceramic implants compared to metal on polyethylene or ceramic on polyethylene. Why is that? So metal on metal has led to numerous lawsuits as well as billions of dollars in settlements with major manufacturers. Why is that? That's due to adverse reactions to metal debris. So in general, metal leads to smaller wear debris than ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, nanometer versus micron. Smaller size and ions allow systemic dissemination of these wear particles. There's stimulation of T cells, and there's aseptic lymphocyte vasculitis associated lesions, or ALVAL. There's adverse local soft tissue reactions with necrosis and pseudotumor formation. And there's osteolysis. Looking at these processes, you initially have generation of wear particles, either due to technical or implant-related issues. These can be taken by antigen-presenting cells, which in turn stimulate T lymphocytes, which in turn lead to macrophage recruitment. Alternatively, you have phagocytization of wear debris by macrophages. All these processes lead to stimulation of macrophages, osteoclast stimulation, osteolysis, as well as death of macrophages and local tissue necrosis and damage. And that can lead to an extremely malignant process with pseudotumor formation. Note that metal corrosion can also occur at any metal modular junction. And trunnion corrosion is a process that occurs via crevice as well as mechanically assisted crevice corrosion. And it's estimated that 2% of revisions of metal on poly total hip arthroplasties are due to trunnion corrosion. So overall, that's why we don't use very many metal on metal total hips. And that's why there's a trend to go away from metal on poly due to corrosion at the junction of the head and the trunnion, and a trend towards going to ceramic on polyethylene, which has less corrosion at the taper. So we've spoken about metal on polyethylene. We've spoken about metal on metal. What about ceramics? So ceramics are metallic and non-metallic elements bonded ionically in a highly oxidized state. They tend to be brittle, they have low tensile strength, they have low fracture resistance. In contrast, they have high compressive strength and high wear resistance. Some examples of ceramics include alumina, which has very low friction, it has high wear resistance. There's zirconia, which has high toughness and crack resistance. The problem with zirconia was that there was a particular product which, due to manufacturing changes, had catastrophic failure. So zirconia isn't frequently used. In contrast, zirconia toughened alumina, also known under the trade name of Biolux Delta, is frequently used. And this is used by multiple manufacturers. So what are the problems with ceramic? And ceramic on ceramic in particular? Number one, as we mentioned, ceramics are brittle materials with low fracture resistance. So there is a risk of fracture. In particular, as mentioned, there were zirconia products that were extremely susceptible to failure. And they're squeaking. Which can be marked and very distressing. This doesn't necessarily happen to this extent very often, but when it does, it's very distressing. So we've spoken mainly about total hips. What about biomaterials for total knees? So most total knees have a bearing surface of cobalt chrome against polyethylene. There are some ceramics available. There are titanium components, for example, titanium tibial components. But again, the bearing couples are mainly metal on polyethylene. So for total hips, cross-linking of the polyethylene has definitely reduced osteolysis. It's led to lower revision rates. It's unclear whether or not cross-linking of polyethylene for total knees has the same effect. So there are some studies suggesting that revision rates are equivalent with cross-linking versus conventional polyethylene. On the other hand, there are also studies suggesting that revision rates are higher for cross-linked polyethylene compared to conventional polyethylene. So the jury's out. Let's go on to some questions. Corrosion of an implant will be prevented by A, an oxide layer, B, repetitive axial loading, C, contact of two dissimilar metals, D, muscle over the implant, or E, a layer of fibrin. And the answer is A, an oxide layer. So this is passivation. For example, a layer of titanium oxide on the taper of a titanium stem mated with a cobalt chrome femoral head. What is the order of increasing elastic modulus for methyl methacrylate, stainless steel, titanium, and cortical bone? A, bone, methacrylate, steel, titanium. B, bone, methacrylate, titanium, steel. C, methacrylate, bone, stainless steel, titanium. D, methacrylate, bone, titanium, stainless steel. E, bone, titanium, methacrylate, stainless steel. And the answer is D, methacrylate, bone, titanium, stainless steel. Galvanic corrosion. A, results from an electrochemical potential between two metals in conductive medium. B, results from contact sites between materials under load. C, results from oxygen tension differences. D, arises from localized pits on metal surfaces. Or E, results from allergic reaction. A, results from an electrochemical potential between two materials in conductive medium. Which bearing surface used in total hip arthroplasty has low toughness? Cobalt chrome, titanium, ceramic, polyethylene, and stainless steel. Answer C, ceramic. Ceramics have low toughness and low fracture resistance. So fracture is rare, but it could be a catastrophic complication. Compared to conventional polyethylene, behavior of highly cross-linked polyethylene is characterized by decreased average wear particle size, increased number of particles, increased resistance to fatigue crack propagation, increased ductility, increased fracture toughness. Answer A, decreased average wear particle size, as well as decreased number of wear particles. What term best describes a decrease in physiologic stress in bone caused by a stiffer structure that shares its load? Stress shielding, bone resorption, bone hypertrophy, bone atrophy, pressure necrosis. Answer is stress shielding. Which of the commonly used orthopedic materials has torsional and axial stiffness moduli that most closely mimics bone? Alumina, zirconia, stainless steel, cobalt chrome, and titanium. Titanium, which makes it especially useful for use in femoral stems, situation in which you want to avoid stress shielding and you want high osseointegration. Which of the following modes better defines corrosion resulting from an electrochemical potential created between two metals in contact and immersed in a conductive medium? Crevice corrosion, galvanic corrosion, fretting corrosion, degradation, and delamination. Answer, galvanic corrosion. The amount of energy per unit volume that a material can absorb prior to failure defines which of the following terms? Toughness, failure point, viscoelasticity, fatigue strength, Young's modulus. Answer is toughness. And finally, we will end with a number of references. These are available as PDFs online. They make for some informative reading. Thank you.